Hello and welcome to the Heads and Volleys podcast with me, Lee Dunn. Today I'm going to go through some of the leaders that have influenced me and really using this time of the year and especially this particular moment in my career to just take a step back and look at where I've come from. So for me, I had a personal goal of achieving an A license by the time I was 30. So I'm 31, and as of right now, all of my assignments for my A license have been submitted and have all been quote unquote green lighted, so they've all passed. Now I'm just waiting for my final assessment. And in feeling like, oh man, maybe I could have achieved it before I was 30, or without really getting on top of myself and thinking about it, it's really just a status. So for anybody that has any level of license, they have a status that identifies how hard they've worked, how much they've committed to their license. That license doesn't show anything else, doesn't show how much you've committed to your teams or to your players or to your family away from the field. There's so much more that goes into who you are as a coach. And when I first came to the US, I felt measured by the license on the piece of paper or the license on your biography on a club website. So anybody with an A license was the ultra and was the elite, and then anybody with an F and an E in the old school ways was kind of below and never really was just never really worth listening to. And as I followed this pathway, now I realize that that's not the case. And I have been incredibly privileged to follow the pathway that I have done, especially for the last 2 years. And if you've listened to some of the recent podcasts, I constantly reference the work that goes into taking this license. And I did a quick summary. And my licenses over the last 2 years, with some flights thrown in, and actually 6 flights from the Bay Area back to Kansas, with the tuition, with some of the expenses that come with being in a place like that, such as drinking with your course mates every night, it's over $11,000. So over $11,000 over 2 years, that's a lot of money that I am very fortunate that my organizations have sponsored me for the most part, and some of it's still out of pocket and I have to make that up elsewhere, but I couldn't afford $11,000 on my own. It's so much that to realize that a piece of paper or a license on a biography is not necessarily worth that if I'm going to be hurting myself financially elsewhere. So really looking at being thankful for the people that have led me along this way and the things that I've learned without actually being involved in a coaching environment. So the role models and the mentors that you pick up from your own environment, the people that you watch, the games that you watch, the stuff that you can read online for free. So you look at websites like Twitter and you follow people that you think have a very similar style of coaching to you or a philosophy. And even the people that do not have the same philosophy, they also have a lot of value too, because it challenges you to either defend or to just question your own and try and align yourself with them for just a minute and understand why they do the things the way they do. That to me is all part of an education process, and that doesn't come across in the letter of the license that's on your biography. So I really want to use this time to encourage you also to reflect on your own pathway as to where you've come from and where you're going, and not only the people who have influenced you, but now the people that you are beginning to influence. So I'll start with my own kind of upbringing of sport and my upbringing in the UK, where we played all the time, we were out on the street, then thinking about playing for my school team, for my local club team. I was on a academy contract with Northampton Town for a couple of years too, until I was released. And then, so there's my professional player story, just like everybody else has one. There's mine. And then really reflecting on the people through my college days and university days of those that impacted me positively. And what I've come to reflect on is the fact that none of them were actually soccer coaches, which I thought was really interesting. And then I realized that the culture of the game, or I believe the culture of the game, is such in the UK that the entire environment is an educator for the game. Because I would go and play at the park with my friends. I'd go and play at the park with my cousin and men. I remember playing a men's game when I was 16 and being petrified and getting hit with the ball and having the logo of the ball printed on my leg for a couple of days. Then I look at the people that have influenced me, and they were just positive role models who were in it for the best reason. So I think about my PE teachers or my lecturers at university who I had constant contact with, but they all had very similar traits in that they were all positive, they were all giving back in some way, and they were all super driven by their need and their desire to affect the next generation. So teachers, of course, that's what they like to do. That's what a big part of drive for them is, but really taking the attention to make sure somebody is okay. So I take that into my own environment. Now I remember how a teacher made me feel or how a lecturer made me feel when I said something wrong or I did something silly, and how they didn't belittle me, they didn't make me feel stupid, but they put their arm around me and they say, you know what, that's all right, let's try it a different way. Then if I think about the people that had a negative influence on me, unfortunately, one of them is a soccer coach. And he was my second year coach within the Northampton Town Academy. And the first year, the coach I had I thought was amazing. I just loved playing for him. I felt like he was my friend. And then the second year I go and I'm in an environment where the coach yells a lot. I don't feel comfortable around him, so I don't really play well. I start to come up with excuses or feeling sick, so I couldn't go to practice. And now when I reflect on that, it drives me so much to not be that person. So I never want to have that effect on a player. And I don't think he knows that he had that effect, unless Coach Russell, you're listening. But if I am now in an environment where a player or any player suddenly takes their foot off the gas, or I feel like they are just not showing up as much, or I see a dip in form, I'm the first one to put my arm around them and just check in with them. They all have an IDP, and so I want to keep on top of them with that and help keep them accountable. But I don't want to be this erratic guy who is suddenly now in control, which is how I reflect on my environment in Northampton Town in the second season. So one of the most significant leaders and effectors on me is this guy who was super negative and had a really bad influence on me. So, of course, I reflect on what I learned from that, and every situation is a learning situation unless you close your mind to it and ignore it, which I think is negative. And we talk about experiential learning in coaching licenses all the time, and you learn by doing, but you can also learn by reflecting too. So I've had these 31 years of experiences to draw upon. So I remember the negatives. Of course, you remember the positives. And then I think about how those have impacted the person I am today, and in particular, the person I am on the field. So I look at my style of play with my players. It's very much a player-led environment. I have my game model, I have my beliefs, I have what I like to see in the game, but then I include my players, and in preseason meetings, I ask them for their thoughts and their experiences and their preferences in the phases of the game, in the moments of the game, and in the thirds of the field. So then they are able to say, yes, we want to play a certain way. Yes, we agree with coach on this way. Or I am able to say, in this area, I would like to see you guys play a certain way. Do you agree with that? So that everybody believes in the same way. Now they're all striving for the same goals. They're all trying to play the same way in a game and collectively, which gives us more chance of success. But my issue is that with a player that doesn't believe in that, then we have to work together to bring them into the fold, or we have to find a way to work our model into suiting them as well. Now, these are still 14 or 15-year-old boys. They are still learning. They're still developing. They're still trying to find their way. Most of them are still trying to find their voice. So there's a couple of boisterous ones in the team. Now, I call it an issue because if I stand in front of the team and I say, playing out of the back. This is what we're going to do every single time, and every single one will nod their head. So then we go to a game and we concede a couple goals early on, and we still play out of the back, and the kids leave frustrated. Now, that's not a very successful environment, and if I reflect on the influencers and leaders in my life, they wouldn't let that happen. They would have stopped it. They would have questioned it. They would have made some significant changes, or at least made some significant actions or backup plans or something. They would have something in mind to deal with this failing of a plan, because they care, because they're super prepared, and they are focused on the task. So then I said to my players, we are going to try and play this way, but what if it doesn't work? So now I have become my own role models, and now I'm challenging my players to have a conscious decision as to what to happen, because worst case, it all falls apart. Best case, we don't even need a plan B. But and I've talked about this before, Antonio Candeva, when he plays for Conte, he says it's so good because he knows what to do. He has the answers. He's a professional player and he has the answers. He wants the answers. So my players want the answers too. Well, what about this? Or what about this? So they are pressing us really high. Can you break the first line with a bit of a longer ball to help us find space in the midfield? Or if they are compact and defending their goal really deep, how do you bring them out? Do you play into feet? Do you play into spaces? Do you play slowly to let them think they're going to steal the ball? These are solutions that I'm working on with the players all the time, so that when we get into a game, it's not a surprise that a team is playing long, or a team is pressing high, or a team is sitting deep. We have an answer to figure that out. So not only is the course cost of education over $11,000, because that doesn't really include the cost of Kansas City barbecue, which is not expensive, but it's really good. So you have to eat a lot of it, or at least as much as you can in the times that you get it. But it also includes over 400 hours of contact time at the National Development Center, and with assignments and instructor contact. So over 400 hours. A lot of people don't have that amount of time available to themselves. They have families, they have teams. So then if I reflect back on cost also, the cost of the 11,000 plus also considers the fact that I have to pay coaches to cover my teams while I'm away. I have to reschedule games. And then there's so much that goes on to me being able to spend those 400 hours involved in that environment. The 400 hours are so valuable because I am able to immerse myself, and this is almost the kind of the candidate story. And if you've been to the National Development Center, you'll probably have said the same thing, that when you leave there on the Friday lunchtime or whatever day your class finishes, you feel like you re-emerge back into the world, because from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m., 11 p.m., some people are up into the early hours of the morning working through sessions and feedback and reviews. Now, you almost leave that environment because you're so immersed, you leave it, you're like, oh my goodness, what has gone on in the world? What is going on out there? And I don't know how many of us are able to actually have that in our lives. Some of you may be working in environments where you have get-togethers, and I think about Edison that I interviewed a couple episodes ago, where he has a Sunday dinner with his coaches, and that's their immersive world, because they talk about soccer, but they also have their families around them, and that I think is so positive. But how many people are actually able to really dive into their own philosophy, or to other philosophies, or to other styles and other stories of where people have come from? And at meeting 3, we had this guy join us from another license who was making up some time. And just adding one new person into the fold changes the dynamic, because he asks new questions, or he asks new ideas, or he delivers certain things, and it just brings such a different dynamic. So from a course of 30, now it's 31, and everything changes again. So how many of you are able to actually spend hours, an hour a week, an hour a day, and multiple hours if you can, in an environment where you're able to challenge yourself and you're able to challenge other people? And I don't think it's enough. I know from my own personal environment, I don't do that enough. I almost am on an island where I have my team and my teams. I go to my games, I go to my practices. There may be other coaches on the field, but it's a, hey, how are you? Yeah, looking good. No, how was your game this weekend? Games this weekend? All right, good. See ya. That's not an expansive conversation over dinner with a coach from Florida when I live in California and ask him about his experience, or ask her about her playing time too and how it impacts her coaching experience. No, that's just a passing conversation. In real life, is it possible? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I know after a long day, I love nothing more than getting home to see my wife and to be home. But is it a problem to have a beer after practice with another coach or grab some food? There's no reason why you shouldn't do that. And especially if that's going to help you in the long run, just keep your mind open that you're not on an island, you're not an individual, you're part of a collective, because you're listening to this, or you have an interest in the game because you love the game so much, or because you want to impact the game so much that you are not going to impact the game on your own. You are going to pass a player on to another coach, and you're going to get a player from another coach, or another team from another club, from another coach. There's so much intermingling going on between coaches and players that we should be having these conversations. And I should know that when a kid comes to me from another club, I should know who that coach is, regardless of the other club that they come from. And I should know what their style of play is. I should know what the coaching style was. And the player should know that. And often they don't, because maybe that coach doesn't have that set out. But if you listen to this, hopefully you pass this on to other people and say, get a game model, get an idea of what you're doing, because then we're able to grow the game. So now we can't spend 400 hours over 2 years in immersed environments, but it's a more meaningful passing conversation with an opposing coach, or with even coaches from your own team, so you can begin to create this network of people that you know and that you can join with. And that brings me on, as always, to Twitter, because Twitter is the place where you can find so much valuable information and you can connect with so many great people. I just don't know why everybody doesn't do it. Now, you build a following, you get 100 followers. That's 100 people. Maybe a couple of them are your family or your wife or your friends, or people that just like it because it's you. But then look at least 75 to 80% of your followers being people that have a genuine interest in what you're doing. Now that's 80% of people in your list that you could have a genuine conversation with about soccer. And if I reflect back on my leaders and influencers, they are the people that always had an open door. They would always be the people that would challenge, and they were always fair. Now, if I can take that into every interaction I have, whether that's on Twitter or in LinkedIn or in the content that I provide, then why can't everybody else do that too? Why can we not impact this game and grow this game so much more than the pace that it's growing at? And I had a conversation just earlier about the growth of the game in the US and the feeling of needing to have a European influence or a world influence in the game in the US to make it feel relevant. And we kind of went off on a few tangents, but ultimately it was decided, or I believe, at least, that there was a great time with all of this influence that was coming into the US, where there were Europeans, there were South Americans, there were people from all over the world beginning to coach in different environments. And my perspective on it is that it's only going to create so many different subcultures within the culture of soccer, that we're going to have players that have all these different skills and different experiences that when we put them together, we're going to create, I guess, effectively a dream team. And I feel like that has dwindled away, and it's become even more competitive in terms of developing your own player and your own player for your status. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the promise that US youth soccer, US soccer had probably 5 or 6 years ago, I feel has kind of come down a little bit. And I don't think that, well, when I first joined the US, or came to the US, I always said that I thought the US would win a World Cup before England, because I thought England would just consistently fail at the quarterfinal stage. And then B, that this was a place that I really wanted to be and influence and have an impact and say the World Cup is here in 2 cycles time. So I would love to say I impacted a player or a culture that is represented at that World Cup. And that's super promising to me. Now, B, yes, I still want to be here. I don't want to be anywhere else in the world. But A, I think is slowly dwindling. And I think that's unfortunate. And so to wrap up this little soapbox, I really want to, again, express gratitude to all the people that have supported me, my wife, Jessica, especially, because without her supporting me and making it comfortable for me to travel away and understanding and accepting, then it doesn't become worth it. And now for the longest time, it was a separation of soccer and family. And only over the last couple of years have we begun to make it more encompassing. And we don't have a child, so we're able to travel. And my cost for her coming to my games is that I have to take her out for dinner, which is never a bad thing to have a date night with your wife. And if you check out my Instagram at LeeDunneSoccer, the pictures are 99% pictures that she takes too. So she comes along with a camera and she gets to practice her photography. And so I get some great pictures, and we get a great time on the road in all of these random little cities in the Bay Area that we end up playing in and finding ourselves nice dinner spots. So she is number one on my gratitude list. But then beyond that is the people that make it possible with finances for the cost of education, and then also the support that they provide. So the people that I meet within the courses, such as the instructors and the candidates and other people that really, they get nothing physically from helping or becoming your friend, but again, to the growth of the game and to creating this culture and environment that soccer wins, people are really, really practicing that attitude within the coaching environment. And I encourage you to do the same thing, whether you are in a coaching license environment or not. Make friends with everybody. There's no rival teams or rival coaches. And of course, there's rival clubs because the directors don't like each other. But there's no reason why you and I can't get on, even though we play against each other on the weekend. And there's nothing better than playing actually against a coach and then betting a beer on it and actually talking about it afterwards. Because I don't just want to beat you. I want to win a beer off you. Of course I do. That's probably why I have more skin in this game right now. But I actually care about us having a good relationship so that we are playing a game that's best for the kids. And it's not me trying to beat you with my machine against yours. It's you and I watching our players execute a game model or a game plan, and hopefully that's a game model or a game plan that they players themselves have actually had a contribution to. So thank you. I thank you for your support and for your listening of this and sharing of this podcast. I regularly check on Anchor where this is produced, and I look at some of the listeners from around the world. I have literally people from all over the world. The other day I looked and there was something like 38 countries where this podcast has been listened to. And I don't think my mum is traveling to all of those countries and listening and on purpose. So there are people out there, and I appreciate you. And I love to share this material, my pathway. And if you check out LeeDunneSoccer.com, I've got some material coming out very shortly of kind of bite-sized experiences of what the coaching pathway has provided me that I'm going to provide on to you. So you can take mini excerpts of what a course looks like and take on some of the off-field tasks that are so important and we don't spend enough time on. And if you watch any typical conversation on Twitter, there's a lot of X's and O's and set pieces and scenarios. But if you look beyond that into your own environment and what is the leader of your club like and what's your relationship with them, and do you have any influence in your environment to create a better environment, or are you able to challenge certain things in the ways things are done in a league or in a club? So I'm really excited to release that material, and I think it'd be really good to give back on the aspects away from the field that we could all do super easily if we just focused and switched on to what the ask is of us. So again, challenging your own environment, challenging your players. And I talked before about creating individual development plans. Those are simple little pieces of advice and support that we can give to our players, and we can provide just a better experience. aside from X's and O's on a field, and maybe you're not confident in tactical play because you only have a 7v7 online diploma. Well, look at LeeDunneSoccer and you'll find enough support on there, as well as on the World Wide Web, that you can become a more confident and more comfortable coach. And I believe it starts with our leaders and our influencers. So begin to assess who is in your environment that you can begin to look up to and you can begin to join. But today, I'm just on a high. This is, as I said, all assignments submitted. I'm kind of on my A game right now. I feel good. We're heading into the holidays. We're about getting ready here for a couple of weeks off and break time, for family time, and just to rejuvenate. I really need to take some time and create my next periodization for the coming season, and get the kids back on the field after traveling all over the world and whatever they're doing. So enjoy this time with your family, enjoy this time in your environment, and head over to LeeDunneSoccer.com. Check out the material I've got coming out on there. Check me out on Twitter, as always, at LeeDunneSoccer. Then you can always check out my wife's pictures of me too on Instagram, as always, at LeeDunneSoccer. And then the thank yous, of course, go to Tactical Pad for their sponsorship, and Soccer Innovations for their tactics board, because both tools just help me relate to my players so much more. They make me feel confident in what I'm showing, because I can actually show it as opposed to just talking blah 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 blah. Almost like you do on a coaching course where you're moving salt and pepper shakers around on the. Now I have a board that I can use and say this is it, or now I can use my tactical pad too. So definitely give them out. They're two great sponsors of this podcast, and I can't speak highly enough of them. So thank you so much. It's the holiday season. Another episode coming out real soon. But for now, enjoy the holidays, enjoy your coaching pathway, and check me out for more online.